wanted to make one announcement. We're finishing the series on addictions today with caretaking addictions. And then starting next week, I'll be doing a series I haven't done for a while. It's called the 12 Spiritual Principles. It's kind of the foundation is from the 12 steps, but I got a history on this group of things because it really goes back to 1981 when I kind of put this program together. So I'll tell you that story next week, though. It's pretty neat the way things kind of come about. But I want to start that series next week, and we'll be doing the principles of acceptance, faith, and trust. And it's a little bit different. You know, as I said, the foundation is from the steps, but I think you'll like it. I mean, it's got a history with me anyway. Okay. I'm going to begin today by doing a reading from Each Day, a New Beginning, the daily meditation book for women. Kind of fits into today. I like today's reading. On occasion, I realize it's easier to say the serenity prayer and take the leap of faith than it is to continue doing what I'm doing. The pain of change is a reality, but so is the pain of no change when change is called for. In spite of our desires, changing others will never be an option, whereas changing ourselves takes only a decision and is a choice always available. We can take inventory for a moment. What are we presently doing that makes us ashamed, angry, or fearful? Most of our struggles, today as in the past, are attached to persons and situations we are trying to forcibly control. How righteous our attitudes generally are, and so imposing is our behavior that we are met with resistance, painful resistance. Our recourse is now and always to accept those things we cannot change, and will only change that which we can. Our personal struggles will end when we are fully committed to the serenity prayer. The wisdom to know the difference is mine today. I wanted to share that because when I did that meditation this morning, it kind of brought into perspective everything I want to talk about today. Because when we talk about caretaking addictions, there are the addictions that are really kind of different and yet special. The history behind them usually comes from people that grow up in homes where I call them the goody two-shoes kids, the nice kids. But so much stress and so much expectation is put on them as children. Especially today, we see this more and more where I expect you to become this, I expect you to get these grades, I expect you to always come through. All these expectations gets us into a lot of trouble. And as a result, what happens very many times is a lot of kids try to meet the expectations that are put on them, but in doing so, you kind of relinquish your childhood. And we don't realize it, but because of that happens, we develop a little bit of resentment, a little bit of anger inside of us. You know, again, just to relate for a couple of minutes, when I was a child, I never had a normal childhood because my mother put a lot of expectations on me. My expectations were to be the family clergyman, the family priest, and I was geared towards that since I was a little boy. In fact, it's ironical, when I was in the 6th grade, my mother had a portable altar in my room so I could practice. So it's scary. But all these expectations, because you're living out their dream, what they wanted. We see this a lot in the pressures of kids today, where kids get into a lot of trouble. You know, it's amazing, even now, after what's been happening with the pandemic and everything, we have so many teenage kids coming in here for therapy, you know, that really have so much pressure on them that they don't know what to do about it. They get confused. We've seen a lot of kids also who have attempted suicide, kids that have this tremendous pressure to perform. The bottom line is what happens a lot of times with these kids when they grow up, they develop issues centralized around what I call the major words of caretaking. The biggest one is control. The second one basically is a lot of fear. And then, of course, there's also the concept in control of being able to manipulate and make people be what I want them to be. The bottom line is it's almost like I was out of control as a kid. I never really had things. So now I want to be in control of everything. I want to run everything. I want to be in charge. But I have this feeling inside of me of emptiness, a feeling of loneliness, a feeling of resentfulness. We see this in codependence when we talk about what we call the family hero. The one kid in the family that always comes through. The one kid that always gets everything done. On the other side, we have the family scapegoat. Because of all the pressure, they end up getting into trouble, causing all kinds of problems. And so as a result, they usually go one way or the other. When it comes to addiction, very many times, so many children growing up this way as adults usually are individuals who literally have a good work ethic. In fact, they have an overwork ethic. And as a result, then very many times they migrate towards a thing we call workaholism. But in reality, it really means that they literally have to be in charge and be in control of everything. They have to run everything. Everything depends on them. Now, I got to confess, when I founded Starting Point and put Starting Point together, the emphasis was on me to run everything. I got comfortable in that role. That's why I said this is my addiction full-heartedly. And for 38 years, I always tell Loretta this all the time. I ran this program by the seat of my pants. I had no idea what I was doing. And so I learned after a while, just take over and be in charge and make everything function around you. And that's what happens a lot of times when it comes to very many adult children, codependents, and individuals. We either migrate one way or migrate the other way. When it comes to drugs and alcohol or addiction, the other side of it, I call these individuals that are what I call the legal addicts. We go to legal pushers. We call them doctors. And literally, we basically use medication and stuff to that effect to be able to embalm and hide our feelings and keep them on the inside. Very many times in my own journey, I used to use alcohol when I was a young priest. In the secrecy of my room at night, nobody knew it, because literally, I couldn't stop at the end of the day for the whirlwind I was on. Because as a young man at age 26, I went to a parish where the pastor was an alcoholic, and I was told I was going to run the place for the next 3 years. I had no idea what I was doing. I was scared out of my mind. I was fearful, but you see, what happens a lot of times is codependents and people that have this addiction are good at performing. Even though I was frustrated and angry, I did everything I was supposed to do, and I came through, and everybody thought I was the greatest thing since the cat's meow. It's totally amazing. And so literally, I was able to control everything. And control is a very scary word. In fact, all these addictions we've talked about over the past few weeks, they all go back to that concept of some sort of control, even though many of them are out of control. When it comes to workaholism, these are individuals who literally will always come through. They will always get everything done. They're always on duty. They don't know how to relax. And so their whole entire life is centralized around what they do. Now, I joke about this, but it's not a joke. I'll use two examples I always love giving to show you how caretakers work. I said this before to you. If you want to get rich, start your own business. Okay, LJ, better listen to me on this one. You want to start your own business. What you do is, if you need 15 workers, you hire 3 caretakers. See, we're good. We can do the work of 5 people easily. In fact, we have rules, and caretakers always have rules. The rules are, I want to run your company for you. I want to be in charge. And therefore, don't even bother coming in. Don't worry about it. And I'll do a good job, don't worry. But there's also other rules. Don't pay me too much. God forbid that you pay me a lot. Because literally, I want to make profit for you. I want to do it for you. Because I like the idea that you tell me what a great person I am, how I get things done, all these things, all these accolades that come to you. The control freaks like that. Because you're putting me up on a pedestal. You make me feel good. And so we see this a lot of times. It's interesting you come down to this because it's an issue of my own. I remember so many times in my journey in my life, asked for your worth. Well, I even joke about it today because people call me up and want me to do a workshop or something to that effect. And they always ask me that question: what's your fee? And of course, I am and ha, I don't know what to tell them. And so now, basically, I'll give you an example. I got a call from the VA hospital in Coatesville to do an all-day workshop for their staff for training. They asked me my fee, and I told them, well, whatever you normally pay, that's fine. It's a good stock answer, you know that. This way, it's not on you, it's on them. Well, I did the workshop. At the end of the workshop, they gave me a check. Of course, I don't want to see too many people see me taking the check. So I hid it in my pocket, got out in the car, took it out, and peeked at it. It was a check for $750. I really thought they had made a mistake. And like an idiot, I went back in and said to the guy, are you sure this is right? He looked at me and said, you said give you the amount we normally give. It's yours, kid, get out of here. And I actually felt guilty. Driving home, I figured maybe I better donate part of it, give part of it here, do this with it. God forbid you just keep it. I don't have that problem anymore, though, because I tell them, call my wife, she'll tell you my fees, not a problem at all. But the bottom line is I'm laughing and joking about this today, but I realize these are things I still have a hard time with, because I know deep down inside, caretakers also have a lot of insecurity. They have a hard time asking for their worth. They have a hard time being able to look at things in that direction. And so as a result, then, they're kind of hard on themselves and tough on themselves. At the same time, they're tough on everybody else too. And so as a result, these control issues can be pretty powerful, especially when it comes to the idea of doing business or working businesses and stuff to that effect. It's almost like I can get everything done. I don't need anybody. You ever work in an office where you have one person who gets there early, gets everything done, and as a result, everybody else can't stand that person? Because literally, you're taking jobs away from other people because you become so dependable, so dependable. There's no balance. It's a big thing. And so we see this very many times because you probably heard this word. I'm sure every one of us here has used it one time or another. Here's where caretakers come in. They ask us, how are you? I'm fine. I'm wonderful. Whenever you hear somebody say to you, I'm fine, you don't realize what you're saying when you say that. Because the word fine actually means, I can't use the first word in public, so I'll just say frustrated, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. I'm a frustrated, insecure, neurotic, emotional person. That's why I'm always fine. In short, don't get too close to me. Don't ask me any questions. And that's the big thing about caretakers. There's always a wall that you put up. Because I don't want people to get too close to me. That's why I've got to be in charge. I got to be in control. I have to be able to run things. At the same time, I'm a nice person externally. Internally, I've got a lot of resentments. Like the person that's running that company, even though they say, I'll get everything done, then the other part of it with caretakers, a lot of times in companies, you do a lot of bitching, griping, and complaining. But don't ever worry, they won't do anything about it. Because basically we like the idea of being in charge, but then we get upset about it. Here's where the resentments come in and things of that effect. You didn't even realize it in your life. It's scary. I've seen this so many times in myself and other people, where basically I had to work through a lot of resentments, a lot of things in my life. But the real resentment I had goes back to my mom, goes back to my family, goes back to the expectations. And until I deal with that and look at that, I can fall into that trap so many times in the course of my life. And that's where learning how to set boundaries, learning to have balance, learning how to say yes and say no. And it's still hard for me to do that because these things are connected to that. And so as a result, we have a tendency very many times to be scared to make changes, to be scared to move forward because all these rules and regulations have been put on top of you. a simple little thing in my own life. I always share, I don't mind sharing it. Actually, two things. One is my mother used to always say, you've heard this before, never fly in an airplane. If God wanted you to fly, God would have given you wings. I was scared to fly in a plane and never flown in one until I was 48 years old. It was shortly after I got married, and my wife actually had to walk me onto the plane, hold my hand. And I tell you, part of me was wondering if my mother be standing at the end of the walkway, going like that to me. The old tapes play inside of your head all the time. It's amazing when you come down to this stuff. The other one I learned as a kid was never ride a bike. They're dangerous. You don't want to get hurt. The overprotection. I never learned how to ride a bike till I was 51 years old. And I have a video of this of the chief of police in Williamstown, New Jersey, a good friend of mine. He was actually 55, I was 51, holding the back seat of the bike, running me down the street as I learned how to ride. I love riding my bike today, but it's just interesting when you come right down to it. All these fears, all these things inside of you. And yet at the same time, you can function, you can perform, you can get things done. People look at you. But then the other piece is you put a lot of your own self on other people depending on you. And as a result, that's a major control issue. Even though I say to them, I don't want to control you. Inside, you really do. It's amazing. You come right down to it. But there's where that resentment comes into play and the anger comes into play. I never realized this, but caretakers are normally very, very, very angry people. And basically they'll hold that resentment, that anger deep down inside. So on the outside, they don't appear to be because they're good. They carry a lot of that on the inside. And unfortunately, it comes out sideways, comes out on the wrong people at the wrong time. So even when it comes to relationships, another addiction that comes under caretaking. Caretakers love to be involved in relationships with sickies. The sicker, the better. We call that the parent-child relationship. Me in charge, you down here, me control you. Then I got to make you into what I want you to be. How many times have people come here and say to me, I really love this guy. I don't like these things about him. But don't worry, once we're married, I'll fix him. Okay. So once I get that piece of paper saying we're married, then I'm going to go to work on him and make him into what I want him to be. Well, it doesn't work that way. And yet we see that a lot of times, even on the other side, we see a lot of battered people in abusive situations. They stay in a long period of time because the abuser is a great controller, using bullying, using, fear, things of that effect to control another individual, another person. Why? I have this fear inside of me. I have the fear that you're going to be on an equal level with me. I can't have that when it comes to a relationship. You see, I have to be in charge. I have to run everything. I always tell the story when I used to go to Al-Anon meetings down in the South Philly Clubhouse on 3rd and Williamson in Philly. And we used to have this lady that came to our meetings all the time. She was so angry at her husband, the alcoholic. And she used to yell and scream at him and everything else. And then one day, he had the audacity to go into treatment and get into recovery. Then she comes to the meetings and complain. He goes to too many damn AA meetings now. And so no matter what, she has to find something wrong with him to keep that control process going. And that's scary because in relationships, there has to be a balance. It's got to be an equal. But so many times we even relinquish our control or relinquish ourselves over the people like this. It can become very domineering, very controlling, very manipulative. And yet at the same time, it's almost like I have a need for somebody to do that to me. Yet we can do it to others in so many simple ways. It's almost like I want to do everything. You don't have to do anything. Even though I resent the fact that you don't do anything. Does that make any sense? It's almost scary because literally, I'm the one who has the answers, you don't. And then the bottom line is, as soon as you start getting well and getting more balanced, then I don't like you too much. So I got to find some other faults that you have. I don't know. But see, that thing is so scary because unless you can work through resentments and things to that effect, what's so scary about it is you literally can fall back into the same traps over and over again. The other one comes under this, and one I can probably talk about for about 2 weeks. It's one of my major addictions, is compulsive overeating. I never truly understood this until I get into my recovery. And it's really scary. Compulsive overeaters usually are very, 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 very angry people. And the comfort food and the food as a way to put insulation around you. It protects you from sexuality. It protects you from intimacy. It protects you from getting too close to people. And as a result, then literally, I migrate into this because I'm hiding so much on the inside. I'm carrying so much rage, so much anger. I look back to a therapist I work with, Dr. Stern, and he basically helped me through a lot of this. I never realized the layers and layers and layers of resentment and anger I built up inside of me over the years. So I get into my eating disorder recovery, began to do my step work, and really begin to look at resentments, look at fears, look at things. And it's amazing because I spent a good portion of my life running around, angry, blaming people, doing all kinds of crazy things. I blamed the church. I blamed everybody for my life. And yet I wasn't happy. And so many of us get caught up in this because we don't realize the fact that the only person that can really help you with a good sense of happiness is your own self. That's why in the reading, they talked about the serenity prayer. You see, I can't change other human beings. It's not my job. It's my job to manipulate them, to make them into what I don't want them to be. And so many times, that's why I get caught up in it. And parents do this a lot of times to kids. A lot of times we try to live out the stuff we didn't have in somebody else, in our children. Give them a break. I umpired baseball games for a long period of time and refereed basketball. I had kids on the field come up to me and say, I wish my parents would never come to my games. They're embarrassing me. They're in the back yelling and screaming and telling them what to do and how they should do it. And then I got to get them all the best of everything because I want them to be this person. I want them to excel in everything. We see this a lot in gymnastics and things to that effect, where I push people and drive people because basically I want them to be number one. Well, what the reality is, I want to be number one, but I didn't make it. Now I'm going to make you make it. I look back on my own life and I see that now, the years I spent in the priesthood, I never knew how much resentment I had over the fact that I never really had a life, never really had a normal life. Yeah, I was able to work through a lot of this stuff and come to the other side later on in my life. But it's really scary because caretaking is a way to do a lot of hiding, a lot of running. And the most important thing is fear of intimacy, fear of closeness, fear of balance, fear of sharing, fearing of letting people be part of your journey. There's also so many times you have a tendency to be kind of cold and not have a sense of sensitivity. And so you have to be able to open up that door and realize the fact that the serenity prayer teaches us to have the courage to work on yourself, to look within your own self. Again, I never knew any of that until I got into recovery. And I'm grateful today. I'm so grateful to so many people today, people that have sponsored me, worked with me, helped me to make these changes in my life, to work through different things. Am I done? No, I'm not. I don't want to ever be done. I want to continue the job of working and discovering and experiencing things. And it's beautiful because I think we learn after a period of time that this is a way in which we continue the process of changing and growing. And one of the hardest things for caretakers is to have that wisdom to back away from the control issues. Now, use an example right here at Starting Point, and I'm going to put Loretta on the spot now, but that's okay. You know, when I relinquished my role as director of Starting Point, that wasn't easy. Because for 38 years, guess what? I was the whole entire enchilada that ran this place by myself, even though I had people around me. And to turn it over and to see the changes taking place in Starting Point now is beautiful. But it was hard for me in the beginning to let go of that role and give it to somebody else. And the ironical part was, I did this with a couple of people prior to this, which didn't work out. And finally, it worked out with someone who was open to begin to bring changes to this place. We're doing things now we never did before, opening up new doors and new directions. Again, half the time I don't even understand it, although Loretta does explain it to me. But I think it's neat. I think it's powerful. You know, to be able to open up in this area and see different things in different areas. And to be able to move to another side of my own journey. And I'm learning now to let go. I don't come in as often as I used to. I have a life outside of here. Isn't that wonderful? I have individuals and people I'm doing stuff with. So things change, the concept changes, everything changes. And that's what's important. Because that wisdom is so important. Do we have the wisdom to learn from our past, to learn from our mistakes, to move forward? I don't want to spend the rest of my life walking around blaming everybody for what's going on. The journey of life is your journey and my journey. We each have our own individual journeys. And therefore, I can spend the rest of my life trying to control everything, control life, and control people around me, or I can spend the rest of my life enjoying it and having a life. That's the hardest part for what I refer to as family heroes, change. I know it's scary for me to make changes because guess what? Being in a priesthood for all those years is a very, very, very comfortable place to be. I had very few really personal responsibilities except my hygiene, but everything was taken care of for me. Then to be able to realize the fact that if I make a decision, make a change in my life, people are going to be upset because the expectations are there. My family, other individuals and people, what I find amazing is I did it and some people got upset, some didn't get upset. And my family eventually came around. It's all part of it. But the bottom line is, there's that fear inside of you. There's that emptiness inside of you. And there's that thing that you try to protect yourself from people getting too close to you. That's why caretakers love to be busy. They love to be in charge. But at the same time, they carry a lot of guilt. You know, my famous story, I love talking about caretakers. You know, visualize this. If you ever notice a person that's really a good caretaker, they work for a company, and they're going to decide, they really do this, by the way, they're going to decide to take a day off and call out sick when they're not sick. This is now the adventure of the day. If you live with someone who's going to call out sick when they're not sick, they're going to spend the whole entire day working on the reason why they're doing it, even though the reason isn't true. And then if you live with them, you better get a hotel room. They're going to be up all night fine-tuning their story. Their anxiety level will be about this high. Then the next morning, they got to make that phone call. Pick the phone up, somebody other answers. I can't come in today. They don't even wait for you to, and the guy says, okay, fine, boom. Now I got a major problem. He never let me tell him the story of why I'm not coming in today, why I'm calling out sick, and now I got a problem on my hands. Maybe I better not go outside. Somebody might see me. Maybe I better do this. And now I have anxiety attacks for the next day. And for the next night, till I get to work the next day. And I come walking in You know what kills caretakers? Nobody even knows that you were missing. God, that we can't stand that. Then I got to run around the company all day telling the story nobody wants to hear. Because I had rehearsed it so long now. That's your day off. Go to work. It's a lot easier. The bottom line is we really feel like this place cannot run without me. And we get caught up in that. Here's where that control thing comes into play, where the anger comes into play, the resentment. And I use the word anger because it's not the kind of anger where somebody's yelling and screaming at someone. It's the way I call that internal anger that comes out, but it comes out in different ways. They even come out in a smile sometimes. People will say, don't you see what you're doing? I know, I got it. Don't worry about it, I got it, even though you don't. I call it the I know disease. It's fantastic. How many times you say, don't you see what you're doing? I know. But you keep doing it. Because really, I don't know, but I have to say I know. And so I get caught up in all this stuff. And the same thing with caretakers. If your neighbor says, I'm having a party at my house on Friday night, love to have you come. And right away, because you don't want to feel guilty, oh, okay. But then once Friday morning comes, you have to start thinking of a story that you can call them and tell them why you don't want to come. Oh, not, can't say that. Why you can't come, because something has come up, I have to go to the hospital, something happened. We make these things up like crazy. And we get so used to it after a while, it becomes normal. I just can't say yes and I can't say no without giving an explanation. I call that the splain disease. Got to explain everything to everybody all the time. You don't. Just say thank you, but I can't make it. Done. Real simple. But the bottom line is we're not that simple, because deep down inside, we feel guilty. We feel like, I'm not coming through the way they want me to come through. The bottom part is half the time, the people we think want us to perform a certain way really don't care. That upsets us even more. And so we have to learn, take it easy. I'm glad that reading today, God works in mysterious ways. When I picked the book up today, I was doing my meditation this morning, and I saw that reading about the serenity prayer. I said, God, thank you, you came through again. But it really is very simple. We can't make somebody else into our image and likeness. Only God can do that. And yes, so many times we play God. We can't make things be what we want them to be. Acceptance and these things are very powerful words. That's why I've often said over and over again, words are real key in the recovery process. And that's one of the things I want to talk about when I get into the 12 spiritual principles next week. Because that word spiritual and principles are so important. And yet we all have to look towards this and work on this to help us in our growth process as individuals. That's what's important. It's a big piece of the puzzle just to put it together. So I guess what I'm saying today is with this addiction series, the whole entire series was about different forms and ways of control. Because what is addiction? It goes back to a theory I call the iceberg theory. In fact, you can get a copy of that. It actually is on the website from last year. You'll see the iceberg theory. You can pick it up. It's under the lectures. But the diagram of the iceberg theory is got all these addictions floating up top here. Underneath, basically, are all the issues, all the resentments, all the fears, all this stuff. And because they're on the iceberg, which means they're frozen in, I have a hard time making changes. I have a hard time moving forward. That's why it's so important to try to open up that door to begin to realize the importance of the journey. And it's a big difference. The last thing I want to talk about is the difference between what I call caretaking and service. See, caretaking is me imposing what I want on somebody else. to make them into what I want them to be. Service is just sharing my experience, strength, and hope with somebody else and allow them their journey. To give you a good example of this, I'll never forget it as long as I live. I did my internship training at DRC in Philadelphia. And I remember sitting in an office with a lady who was an alcoholic. And I was determined she's not getting out of that office till she went to treatment. And I drove her nuts. I browbeated her, everything, the whole works. And I kept trying to convince her, that's what you got to do, you got to do. And then Jack, my mentor, knocked on the door and he said, come here, Vince. He said, well, what am I going to do, Jack? She won't go to treatment. He said, Vince, I got to tell you something. Put this in your brain. The lady wants to drink. Leave her the hell alone. I was shocked. What do you mean leave her alone? She got a problem, we got to fix it. He says, leave her alone. You offer something to her, let her go. I thought he was the meanest man on the face of the earth. And yet now I know. He was trying to teach me some very basic principles. I don't have the power to make her be what I want her to be. Goes back to the old concept. I can lead the horse to water. I can shove his head in the water, but I can't make him drink the water. So the bottom line is in our journey, we have no difference between what I call caretaking and service. Service is great. It's okay to help a little old lady walk across the street. She's having a hard time doing it. But make sure you ask her first if she wants you to help her. Okay? I remember one time this guy told me the story at a meeting. I heard him say it. He said, this lady was standing on the corner. So I went over, grabbed her by the arm, started walking her across the street. She kept looking at me and she was upset and she kept pulling away at me. I got her to the other side. I said, no, that wasn't so hard, was it? I know you needed to get over there safe and sound. She said, I didn't want to cross the street. I was waiting for a bus on the corner. You made me miss my bus now. It just went by. So, I mean, the bottom line is the same. You want to help someone, ask them first. Don't decide that you're going to fix them, take care of them. No, somebody told me a long time ago, if you truly do honestly work on yourself, it's a full-time job. Addiction only comes when you're avoiding or running away from looking at the real you. And sooner or later, you got to do that. You know, I ran away from the real me for the first 44 years of my life. It took me a long time to get through this skull. And now I realize I can't run anymore. I got to keep growing and learning. And that's really what it's about. So my prayer today, I just want to ask God to bless all of us as we go through this journey. These addictions teach us the importance of releasing control, releasing fear, being able to look within our own self, and just be able to be a gentle person and realize who we are, how special we are. Let us pray. God, we come before you today as a family. We thank you and we ask your guidance and direction. Help us to walk the journey of earth and do the best job we can do on developing ourselves and becoming closer to you. Teach us to be open to others, but to allow them their dignity, to allow them their choices, to allow them what they need to do. We come before you and we ask for your guidance and your direction. And we ask in a very special way that we're able to open our hearts and minds to help others, the gift of service, if they truly want our help. And that's what's so important. So it's in the spirit of being able to give the gift of ourselves to others. But we have to be able to live in the sense that the only one we can trust and put our full confidence in is you. You are the God of our life, the God of our salvation, the God who guides us on the journey of this life. We pray and we ask this every day in your name. Amen. Now I want to ask that we just kind of unmute yourselves And we'll kind of close out by saying the serenity prayer.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. God's will, not mine, be done.